You remember the argument perfectly. You remember exactly what you said, exactly what they said, and exactly how unreasonable they were being. The only problem is, so do they, and their version is completely different. Your mind is not a camera. It never was. Every day, your brain takes in more information than it could ever fully process, so it builds shortcuts. Those shortcuts help you survive. They also quietly rewrite your reality. Psychologists call these shortcuts cognitive biases, and there are dozens of them shaping how you see other people, how you remember the past, and how you predict the future. Most of them work in the dark, invisible to the very mind they're operating inside. Take confirmation bias. Once you believe something, your brain starts hunting for evidence that agrees with you. Psychologist Peter Wason first demonstrated this in the 1960s, showing that people consistently sought out information that confirmed their existing assumptions, rather than information that might disprove them. This is why two people can watch the same debate and both walk away feeling certain their side won. Their brains weren't watching the same event. They were each collecting proof for a verdict they had already reached. Then there's the availability heuristic, named by psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. Your brain judges how likely something is by how easily examples come to mind, not by actual statistics. Plane crashes dominate the news, so flying can feel more dangerous than driving, even though the numbers say the opposite. Your brain isn't calculating risk, it's counting memories, and memories are not evidence. Here's a stranger one. The backfire effect. Show someone solid proof that a belief they hold is wrong, and instead of updating their view, they sometimes believe it more strongly. Confronting a belief head-on can feel like an attack on identity itself, and identity does not surrender easily to facts. None of this makes you gullible or foolish. It makes you a mind trying to make sense of an overwhelming world with limited time and limited information. Bias isn't a bug hiding in a few unlucky people. It's standard architecture built into how every human brain filters reality. Consider the fundamental attribution error. When someone else cuts you off in traffic, you assume they're reckless or rude. When you cut someone off, you assume there was a reason. You were late, distracted, or didn't see them. Social psychologist Lee Ross documented this pattern extensively. People explain their own behavior through circumstance, but explain other people's behavior through character. You are always the exception in your own story. Everyone else is just their worst habit. This bias alone explains a staggering amount of everyday conflict. Two people both convinced the other is simply a difficult person, when really both are just applying two different sets of rules, one generous, one harsh, depending on whose behavior is being judged. Then there's the sunk cost fallacy, the reason you finish a terrible film because you've already watched an hour of it, or stay in a relationship that stopped working years ago because leaving would mean admitting the time already spent meant nothing. Economists Richard Thaler and Daniel Kahneman studied this extensively. The past investment is gone either way, but the brain treats walking away as a fresh loss, rather than recognizing that the original loss already happened. Dunning-Kruger is perhaps the most quoted bias online, and also the most misunderstood. Psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger found that people with limited knowledge in an area often overestimate their competence. not because they're arrogant, but because the same lack of skill that makes them bad at a task also makes them unable to recognize how bad they are at it. Skill and self-assessment rely on the same knowledge. Without one, the other collapses too. Anchoring works differently, and it's arguably the easiest bias to prove in a single sentence. The first number you hear becomes a reference point your brain can't fully escape, even when you know it's arbitrary. Tversky and Kahneman showed this by spinning a rigged wheel that landed on either a low or high number, then asking people to estimate an unrelated statistic. The number from the wheel, a number everyone knew was random, still shifted people's answers. A price tag slashed from an inflated original figure works on exactly this weakness. The first number sets the frame, and every number after it gets measured against something that was never real to begin with. The halo effect works in the opposite direction, moving outward from one trait to an entire impression. Psychologist Edward Thorndike documented this a century ago. A single positive quality, often something as shallow as physical attractiveness or a confident voice, causes people to assume a person is also more intelligent, more trustworthy, or more competent with no supporting evidence at all. One good trait writes checks the rest of the person's character never signed. This is why a well-dressed stranger can seem more believable making the exact same claim a scruffy one makes, and why charisma is so often mistaken for correctness. Then there's negativity bias, one of the oldest patterns in the human mind. Psychologist Paul Rosen's research showed that bad experiences and bad information carry far more psychological weight than good ones of equal size. A single harsh comment can outlast a dozen compliments. A single mistake can eclipse a year of competent work in someone's memory of you. This isn't a personality trait some people have and others don't. It shows up consistently across cultures and age groups, which suggests it's simply how threat-scanning minds are built. A mind constantly alert for danger will always weigh the bad news more heavily, because for most of human history, missing a threat was far more costly than missing a reward. Notice what's happening here. None of these biases operate one at a time. They stack. Confirmation bias decides what evidence you notice. The availability heuristic decides what feels statistically likely. The fundamental attribution error decides how you judge the people involved, while anchoring and the halo effect are already shaping first impressions before any of that reasoning even begins. By the time you form an opinion, it is passed through several filters, each one quietly bending the picture before it reaches conscious thought. This is why two eyewitnesses to the same event can give contradictory accounts and both pass a lie detector test. They aren't lying. Their brains constructed different realities from the identical raw material, and each person experienced their version as simply what happened. Anthropologists have found similar patterns across radically different cultures, suggesting these mental shortcuts aren't a flaw of modern life, but a feature of the human brain itself, shaped long before newspapers, courtrooms, or social media existed. A mind built to make fast decisions with incomplete information will always trade some accuracy for speed. That trade made sense when you were deciding who was right in an email thread. There is something genuinely strange about all this. The mind that tells you it sees the world clearly is the same mind quietly editing what you see in real time without asking permission. You don't experience bias as bias, you experience it as certainty. So the next time you feel completely sure that you remember something correctly, that you understand someone else's motives, or that the evidence obviously supports your side, it's worth pausing on one thought. Certainty was never proof that your mind got it right. It was only proof that your mind stopped questioning. Your brain was never built to show you the whole picture. It was built to show you a workable one, fast enough to keep you moving, convincing enough that you'd never think to check.